Good evening or afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another big tropical update by Adrian's Weather Forecast. And we have a lot to talk about here, specifically now with newly formed Tropical Depression 9, as we're watching out for this to possibly become a major Hurricane Ida and posing a massive threat for portions specifically of eastern Louisiana and the north central Gulf Coast, including as well Mississippi. We're watching out for potentially a major hurricane to strengthen within the Gulf of Mexico here and posing extreme threats for Louisiana, including very strong winds, very significant storm surge, and obviously extreme flooding here. So it's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, as well. I'll be slightly mentioning Invest 97 and 98L, but right now, a lot of this video will be officially looking at Tropical Depression 9, or soon to become trials from Ida within the next few advisories here. So definitely getting its act together. But here's a look here at the overall forecast on the 5 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. And there's a look here at it is still under a 35 miles an hour. So it's definitely getting its act together. And it's definitely trying to get towards that 40-mile-an-hour mark there. Minimum pressure has actually gone up 1 millibar. I believe it was as low as 1,005 at 2 o'clock and at 2006 at 5 o'clock, and then it's going northwest there at 14 miles an hour. So I think at this point it's most likely going to go very close to Havana and then pose a threat there for New Orleans there, portions there of the eastern parishes. So really watching out for that general vicinity here, especially if it goes kind of northwest where like expected, it actually may completely avoid Yucatan. It may skin Cuba, but since it's so thin, it's very flat, we shouldn't have to really worry about anything like that. So overall, it has a ton of water and overall extremely conducive environment. So obviously, as well as some pretty strong, we had obviously some pretty strong wording here. When this obviously was first an invest, and actually it was the first invest to ever have a key message. So here's the overall key message we have now. Tropical storm conditions are expected in portions of the Cayman Islands tonight and into portions of western Cuba of the Isle of Youth Friday. Dangerous storm surge is possible Friday in portions of western Cuba, including the Isle of Youth and areas of onshore flow. Life-threatening heavy rains and flash flooding and mudslides are expected across Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, western Cuba, and the Isles of Youth. So obviously this could very well be even a very significant threat, specifically for the Cayman Islands and Cuba. And this system is expected to approach the northern Gulf as a near major hurricane intensity on Sunday, where there is an increasing risk of life-threatening storm surge. I mean, they have life-threatening storm surge. Instead of dangerous storm surge, they have life-threatening storm surge, damaging hurricane force winds and heavy rainfall Sunday and Monday, especially along the coast of Louisiana. Storm surge and hurricane watches will likely be issued for the portion of the area later tonight or Friday morning. So we may easily wake up to hurricane watches and very widespread tropical storm warnings and watches all across the north central Gulf of Mexico. So we're definitely keeping a very close eye on that. Again, really intense warning here. There's some evidence of light to moderate southerly shear over the system, but with the cyclone moving to the high ocean heat content waters of the northwestern Caribbean Sea, the shear should not hinder intensification. Really, again, it also has an upper level anticyclone, so it's going to really prevent a lot of that shear to even really hurt it. Strengthening anticipated during the next 12 to 24 hours as well. Once the system moves into the Gulf of Mexico, we'll be traversing a warm eddy, and this feature, combined with favorable upper-level wind pattern and a moist atmosphere, is likely to result in steady to rapid strengthening on Saturday and Saturday night. So we could very well see some intense rapid intensification. Again, we kind of already looked at the overall key message, and the peak is 110 miles an hour, so a very, very high in Category 2. And that went in that by 8 or 11 o'clock, they have it over 115 miles an hour. Again, now let's get a look at the overall two invests we have right now. So really, actually, it was really surprising. I wouldn't say surprising, but Invest 98L has not gone up to a 60 to 70%, so actually a high chance or likelihood of formation within the next 5 days, and a 60% here for the next 48 hours, with a more conducive environment here likely to be expected as it goes further northward. And then we obviously now have Invest 97L still at a 50-70% here, so both Invest are at a high likelihood of formation. So keeping an eye as well for maybe we may get as high or as deep in the alphabet before September as Kate, which will be letter K. And as we obviously advance, the National Hurricane Center just loves doing updates right when I do my videos, and it came up with a special advisory now. This is now a tropical storm, as Recon has supported, or did support, tropical storm winds and the surface here as they went obviously in recon. They're continuing to stay in recon. I believe they found 50 knots at flight level, and so obviously they obviously did make a special advisory, and this is now 40 miles an hour, 1,006 millibars, and still going northwest at 14 miles an hour. So this is now a tropical storm. Obviously, since it's special advisory, it's going to take a little bit while. But there you see Tropical Storm Ida. We do now have letter I. So now we will see when this becomes a hurricane. So let's take a look here at Cellar Imagery here. And this thing's actually looking pretty good as it is obviously just towards the west here of Jamaica. So there's the actual surface low basically within that area of some overall, seeing some good amount of convection kind of starting to pop up here within the actual center, and it looks like the LLC and MLC are probably about, I'd say they're probably stacked or so, and that's exactly why this thing's pretty strengthening at a decent rate here. So already 40 miles an hour. I believe that is earlier than what the National Hurricane Center had. I'm not sure exactly when they had to become a tropical storm, the first advisory, but I don't think it was this early. But every 40 miles an hour, and this thing has a ton of very deep ocean heat content before it actually gets anywhere near the Havana and western Cuba vicinity. So this thing could easily become a high-end tropical storm before it actually gets near that general area. So overall, keeping a very close eye on that overall good amount of vorticity here within the actual surface low. You can kind of see that good amount of rotation here. As what we did a little bit sheer kind of from the southwest here, but that shouldn't really impact the storm too much. But overall, it's not looking too shabby. You see a lot as well of some banding starting to branch out here towards the southeast here. Some good amount of branching as well. The strongest winds are kind of toward the northeast quadrant, and that's where we're seeing some pretty deep initiation right there, just to the north there of Cuba. You see a good amount of latest initiation going on as the storm's now going northwest, as well as seeing some more widespread cumulus clouds kind of stretching out like that, and that is showing you that we are kind of really getting a upper level anticyclone starting to develop here. But overall, keeping a very close eye on that. Here's the latest look at the 5 p.m. advisory. This is obviously before the special advisory, which came out like 3 minutes or 4 minutes after, really after the actual 5 o'clock advisory. So there it is. Tropical storm warnings now across, I believe, they're across overall much of western and central Cuba there, including Havana. As well, expected to obviously stay into a tropical storm and hitting portion there of western Cuba. Again, we didn't really think about Cuba getting hit here, really watching out. Originally, we were watching out for Yucatan, but since this thing, this actually the ridge has really pushed further northward, it has allowed for the storm to continue as it goes into that strengthening phase to continue to go northwestward instead of getting steered by the trade wind to going westward or northwestward like that. It's expected to become a hurricane by Saturday afternoon here, but I wouldn't doubt if it becomes a hurricane by Saturday morning. And expecting here to get up to 110 mile an hour peak and making landfall there for eastern Louisiana there, and possibly going to go very close to New Orleans here, then advance further into Louisiana as a tropical storm, as well going to be going across and basically over the Mississippi River as a tropical depression. So that's what we're watching out for some widespread inland flooding threats as well, especially if there is significant storm surge and that kind of goes throughout the Mississippi River. We could very well see a ton of flash flood warnings across portions all the way up as far north as Memphis. So here's obviously the latest look here before the special advisory. There it is. They actually have there's the actual new advisory there, 40 miles an hour. Expected to become a overall high-end tropical storm as it gets closer to towards Havana and western Cuba. So they're at 65 miles an hour, then getting up to a hurricane by Saturday in the afternoon and making landfall as a very high-end category 2. They actually kept the 110 mile an hour peak. Let's not get a look here to refresh this since the 5 o'clock or the new emergency update has come out. So overall, watching out for these tropical storm winds to get towards Cuba within tomorrow afternoon here, but that's what we can see some gusts by tomorrow midday, or even in the latest latest morning hours. And then we kind of see that's really only like a 70-80%, but then they increase it all the way up to 80 to 90%, and that's obviously watching out for Sunday morning, start seeing those winds, but overall watching out for Sunday afternoonish for a landfall, at least as of now, for this system. Overall tracks here, again, the majority have kind of pushed a little bit further westward, but I'm really keeping a close eye on portions there near New Orleans, and I wouldn't even doubt it to watch out for really the Biloxi region, Gulfport region there, Mississippi getting absolutely hammered, because let's say it does get close to let's see here, just if this area here, if it kind of goes towards New Orleans, maybe a little bit east of New Orleans, if I can actually draw like that, that would obviously bring in the northeast quadrant for this vicinity here. So we can't rule out the possibility, although Mississippi may not get a landfall, it's still uncertain still, but I feel like this area is going to get absolutely hammered. So if you're in New Orleans, even if you're there near Cameron, Louisiana, even though Cameron's all the way over here. Actually, no, I didn't mean Cameron. I meant Morgan City. Morgan City's like right here. Morgan City's like right here. New Orleans. Overall, much of eastern Louisiana and portions there of northeast or the coast there of Mississippi, you guys are gonna get absolutely hammered if this verifies. Especially again, I think the 110 miles an hour is reasonable considering it's only the second advisory. Well, obviously third with the special advisory, but I think 110. Actually, I think they went 110 for the first ever advisory. I mean, you typically do not see the National Hurricane Center go so straightforward at a very high in Category 2, because obviously that's 1 mile an hour from a Category 3. So the fact they jumped on so early within that strength is definitely concerning here. They obviously only showed Dorian, Michael, um, I believe Laura as tropical storms in the first few advisories, but this one straight went to 110 miles an hour. So this thing could very well become significant. Category 3, Category 4 can't be ruled out. I mean, the conditions they're just absolutely amazing. The conditions here. So here's like the overall intensity guidance. So there it is at a 35 knot system, which is 40 miles an hour. The majority want to have it making become a, at least assembles, the majority want to have it become a hurricane within the next 36 to 60 hours or so. So I actually would not doubt this does become a hurricane by Saturday morning. We may see an overall strong diurnal maximum, or maybe even an early rapid intensification here over the really deep ocean heat content, overall extremely favorable conditions, where obviously gray spots act together south of Cuba. So we have a ton of models now getting into a Category 2, but I wouldn't doubt by probably overnight we get a ton getting it to a high in Category 2 or a low in Category 3. We already have 2 getting it to a Category 3 here. But overall, you kind of see these models are really getting a strong climax and then rapidly weakening. But overall, going to watch out for even northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and western Mississippi get hit quite hard by this tropical storm. And obviously weakening to a tropical depression, but going to really watch out as well for overall pretty widespread flooding. Here's like the overall tropical storm 9G EFS tracks here in the overall symbols. You can kind of see that a lot of them actually want to have, a lot of the members want to get it sub 970 millibars, which would basically support obviously a high in Category 2, maybe low in Category 3 as of now. But obviously this wise, looking at this pressure wise, probably they're really mainly aiming for a Category 2, probably 110-ish miles an hour, maybe 115 miles an hour. Which will obviously be Category 3, but overall, the majority really have it obviously kind of going towards Cuba and then aiming for Louisiana. We have a few getting it towards Mississippi there, actually one member actually has it making landfall, and Mississippi there at a sub 970 storm. We still have a few getting it towards Cameron and Lake Charles. But if I'm being completely honest, based on the setup, the ridge moving northward and advancing further to the northeast Gulf and all that good stuff, I think this is probably going to head for eastern Louisiana near Morgan City, or even surprisingly even aiming straight for New Orleans. So let's now start getting to the overall actual conditions here by looking at the overall SSCs here as of earlier today here. So actually yesterday, I believe so. So overall, some pretty warm waters, and actually as Ida continues to move start northwest, where it's going to be getting into further warmer waters and deeper ocean content. Earlier yesterday it was kind of nearly 28.5, and now it's kind of pushing more towards 29 degrees Celsius. And at some point, it's going to be in the really deep open waters there, the Gulf of Mexico, which with very widespread 30 degrees and even 31 degrees Celsius, with a few scattered 32 just off the coast of Louisiana. But that's right on the coast here, so it really won't be super crazy that we have 32, but overall 32 really won't be much of a bigger difference than the widespread 31 we have in the Gulf of Mexico. So obviously, I know waters and everything, but based off alone, the waters are absolutely crazy warm, especially if this thing only skins Cuba, and that's the only land it touches before the United States. It's going to definitely become a major system, because obviously, if it were like kind of skinning Nicaragua or skinning Central America and then hitting the Yucatan Peninsula like previously in the first few runs, that would obviously made it a lot weaker, a lot harder for it to actually gain strength here. But now that it's going like this, it avoids Jamaica, maybe skins Cuba, maybe heads for like eastern Louisiana. I honestly think that this this is obviously going to be a pretty big threat. If it just skins Cuba at that rate speed, it's not going to affect it whatsoever. And then it has those really warm waters. This thing's definitely in for a big threat here. And I wouldn't even doubt Mississippi out of landfall. If I'm being completely honest, I would not rule out the possibility of even eastern or even western. Even though Mississippi coast is really small, it's still the western area where I think we can get landfall. Maybe it like skins like the little parishes there of Louisiana, but not near New Orleans, like the far eastern part there. But here's an overall look at the ocean heat content. And obviously, ocean heat content's pretty widespread. It's about to start moving into some deeper ocean heat content right here near western Cuba, getting anywhere from 125 to nearly 150 meters there of 100 plus degrees in Fahrenheit. Then we have a massive blob here of extremely deep ocean heat content of over 150 meters deep. And that's obviously exactly where the storm is going to go. So it could easily become a monster storm just before a landfall. And probably make landfall as a high in Category 3. And obviously, I don't want to freak people out, but this thing is a pretty serious storm. There's a reason why this was the first ever invest with a key message, and why the National Hurricane Center went already high in Category 2 in the first advisory. This storm is definitely very concerning here. And who knows if it's stronger than Grace. There's a very, very good chance that this could very well be stronger than Grace. So let's not get a look at the overall 18Z GFS here. So like I just said, maybe I'm going to be looking at overall 99, or not 99L, sorry, with Ida. Because obviously the other two invests are going to be over water. And although they're still going to be systems, obviously it's still something to talk about. But I'm really focused on the most dangerous storm out of all of these, with obviously already quote unquote life-threatening storm surge that was listed there in the key message. So obviously I'm only going to be really talking about Ida at this point. So obviously I'm just going to point out that the GFS is still trending that 98L will form at 999 millibars, and having 97L struggle as it really does not close off, and there's still a ton of dry air. But overall, it's like 98L could very well actually be a surprise here and actually get as low as 988 millibars, and maybe even lower than that. So overall, even watching out for maybe we may get Julian. I mean, it's very, 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 very likely we get Julian here. But about Kate still, obviously they both 97L and 98L would have to form here, and it's still not complete. It's still very, very uncertain here. But let's go look at the overall GFS here for Ida. So they obviously have it at 1,000 millibars for areas west of Cuba. So the GFS so far is pretty darn accurate. This is obviously 12Z, so 18Z will be a little bit more on up to date. And then by 24 hours, GFS wants it to a 993 millibars before Cuba. And if I'm being completely honest, I wouldn't doubt this does make landfall in western Cuba as 70 miles an hour. Right now, the National Hurricane Center has it at 65, but based on the future overall conditions and overall a good maybe 300 miles of no lands, really, I think this could easily hit Cuba at 70 miles an hour. Looking at 986 there for the next 30 hours or so, and then GFS then as it goes into the Gulf of Mexico, very overall good conditions, low vertical shear, even not much shear in the upper levels. Overall a good upper level anticyclone, warm water, extreme ocean heat content, really good amount of moisture. The things are gonna absolutely blow up here, and the GFS wants to have actually get towards 955 millibars, which is obviously a lot weaker than the initial 932 they had. So 951 millibars, and GFS basically takes New Orleans straight over the northeast quadrant. So I honestly think that New Orleans could very well get absolutely hammered if this continues a trend, as well, even watching out for northeast Mississippi out. And again, if it does what I think it will do, I honestly think there's a chance that it could very well kind of go like this here and probably hit, like, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I would not doubt this happens. I think it's a little bit more dramatic, but if I'm being completely honest, the most reasonable track I think is probably this. I know it's pretty far east, but if it really, really are like that, I think at this point it's going to start steering further northward, as a trough would have more of a big effect on it and kind of pull it with it, and that's going to obviously be very interesting here. So I'm really watching out landfall wise. I'm still going all the way maybe southwestern. This is my area of landfall, or obviously the coast region. This is gonna be my area of potential landfall here. I wouldn't even doubt like western Mississippi there. I know not many people are even mentioning Mississippi, but I think they have to be talked about. And then it goes even up into areas near let's see here, what is that, near Baton Rouge there at nearly 975 millibars, and gonna still bring some really extreme rainfall. Good thing is this thing's not going to be heading towards Lake Charles, at least as of the last few runs, and it's reasonable that it does not go to western Louisiana. But the good thing it's not going to be going towards Lake Charles or Cameron, because if that were to happen, that means the Mississippi River will be getting the northeast quadrant, just getting absolutely hammered with rainfall. Obviously, it's also going to be seeing a ton of rainfall there in the mouth of maybe the Chattahoochee there near the Panhandle, and still a ton of rain there. But obviously, thankfully, it's not going to be like right here near Arkansas or Little Rock or like this, because that would just be absolutely awful and probably catastrophic for some areas, because obviously the Mississippi River is already over its flood stage in many regions. Let's take a look at the overall CMC, see what they have as a 12Z, and they obviously as well want to have it very similar, but they're still really, really underestimating the storm here, not getting into the triple digits till really after Cuba, and then making landfall at 985 millibar. But that's definitely being really, I guess, very, very conservative. CMC as well kind of has it getting pretty strong at 976, but getting it towards south central. Now, that obviously you can kind of see how there's a lot more rain over the Mississippi River, how it's just slightly more westward. So the slight western shifts could really change the game there for areas inland. And then that's basically what we have so far. The European as well showing some really strong amount of vorticity. I'm looking at the European showing. The European is showing an absolute monster for this storm here. Look, 850 millibar winds. They don't have 10 meters. They just do an absolute monster here, but not really necessarily symmetrical. It's gonna be more, I guess, really elongated. Really, it's gonna be really elongated, but it's not gonna really be symmetrical because there's gonna be some shear kind of on the east, or I guess the western side as well, with some negative EPUs. But overall, this thing's just an absolute monster. Just look at that, what they showed on vorticity, just an absolute monster. So now I gotta look here with the GFS, also say for vorticity, and obviously looks like 18Z is just running, so let's go back to 12Z. I mean, look at the apps. I mean, even GFS doing an absolute monster, actually going straight over New Orleans. You can't even see New Orleans, and as well as CMC as well, quite intense with it. See what the H warp is showing here at the 12Z, and we're gonna only be looking at the H warp here for 90 and for Ida, and not the other invest. Like I said, those are really irrelevant as of now. So H warp has one very similar towards the GFS. The GFS actually is stronger than the H warp here. H warp only having a 992 before the western Cuba landfall. Then it really strengthens there to 941 millibar landfall there near south central Louisiana. That would be absolutely crazy and catastrophic for areas like Morgan City, Louisiana. Even New Orleans will get absolutely hammered still. Baton Rouge will get hammered. So, I mean, that obviously will be pretty significant as well for the Mississippi River, specifically the southern side there, near northeast Louisiana and southwest and southeast Arkansas. So here's look at the overall 1 to 5 day look at the rainfall totals, and look how high the rainfall totals are for eastern Louisiana and portions of southern Mississippi. Like I just say, southern Mississippi is gonna get absolutely hammered. I mean, they're gonna get absolutely hammered. I know Mississippi's not really getting talked about much, but they will get hammered, especially if it does stay out of pretty good eastern shift here where it is now. Like areas near Biloxi will get absolutely hammered by rainfall, storms. I mean, storms are going to be absolutely crazy across the portions, even all the way up to Panama City and Apalachicola. We may get 1 to 3 foot storm surge, and I think we could easily get, I mean, maybe 10+ foot storm surge, if it gets to a major hurricane. Obviously, right now, I think if they were to again, obviously, issue the storm surge already, since we obviously it's already a tropical storm. But once we actually get the tropical storm warnings and hurricane watches and all that, I think we could easily get valleys if the overall peak forecast goes up to maybe 115, 120. I wouldn't doubt it could easily get storm surge of over 10 plus. I mean, this is definitely a very significant storm here. I believe Laura had like 15 to 20 foot storm surge forecasted. I'm not comparing this to Laura. I'm just comparing it, or I'm not comparing it like saying it's gonna happen. I don't know why I did that, but overall, look at that, 15 inches, maybe 15 to 20 inches there across even New Orleans, far inland. As you see, it's pretty far inland as well. There near the Mississippi border, there near Macomb, as well, pretty widespread, 7 to 10 inches. Even get widespread 5 to 7 there, all the way up there near to below there, all the way near Jackson. I mean, really wide for flooding here. Again, you're still seeing some significant flash flooding, potential 3 to 5 inches there across the Mississippi. But if this thing were to any further westward, I mean, it would be completely different for these areas. But overall, extremely intense and obviously even life-threatening flash flooding here especially if you kind of take into consideration with storm surge on the coast and that much rainfall. It's going to be absolutely crazy. Let's take a look at the 12Z GFS 10-meter winds here. So they want to get it up to really around 74. Actually, they want to have it getting into a hurricane before Cuba, getting up to 80 miles an hour, getting some pretty strong storm or winds there, and even that would be pretty significant for Havana. I wouldn't doubt Havana. If this GFS were to verify, they would get over 60 mile an hour wind sustained, and the GFS kind of gets it's starting to become a little bit more symmetrical. It looks like the eastern quadrant is going to definitely be the far most significant there. That's exactly what we saw with recon data, that the most significant wind and overall initiation was on the eastern quadrant, and then it's specifically northeast quadrant. There's the overall really strong winds there, 102 miles an hour, 119, 120 miles an hour there. So overall, they want to have it just a little stronger and getting up to a low end category 3. They're absolutely hammered though for Louisiana. I mean, look at New Orleans would get absolutely hammered, 66, 79. I mean, it's like the New Orleans, if this were to verify, New Orleans would get over 90 miles an hour sustained. And obviously, again, look at the storm surge. I mean, if we see like winds sustained of over 65 plus there near Mississippi, imagine the storm surge, that kind of clockwise flow. We could easily as well, if this were to verify the strong major hurricane, this could as well bring an over 5-foot storm surge even near the Alabama coast. So really keeping a close eye on the storm, quite significant for sure. If you look at the overall 10-meter wind gusts here. Actually, let's go look at the overall. Let's look at the 10-meter wind gusts here, miles an hour. I'm actually interested what it's going to be, how high it's going to be. Oh, I forgot this is 18Z. Let's go back to 12Z. All right, back to 12Z here. So going to get even max gust there of over around 70 there near Cuba, with over 82 there before it makes landfall. Then getting gusts of over 116. Gonna get gusts even near over 50 there near Jackson. So even Jackson can get absolutely hammered. Even some gusts there over nearly 50 near Huntsville and Birmingham, and even as well watching specifically there near Tuscaloosa. So this could very well be pretty significant, even pretty far inland. I mean, this could definitely be pretty widespread flash flooding, storms, not storm surge, sorry, power outage threat. Just all of that is going to be very, very interesting. Rainfall totals predicted by the GFS here are basically nearly 15 inches. This is absolutely crazy with 4.5, nearly 6 there up near Mississippi overall. So actually going to look here at other models on what they have for the rain totals as well. Again, the icon's pretty far west compared to the other models here. But there you can kind of see they really want to get up to nearly 20 inches of rain there near the coast of south central southeastern Louisiana, and they, like I did say, there's going to be a lot more significant rainfall for the Mississippi River if it were to stay westward. Exactly what you can see with the icon, and compared to GFS, they want to get over nearly 8 inches there into the Mississippi River, while compared to the GFS, it's a lot more different. But obviously, it's against a pretty significant storm. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll have more updates on Tropical Storm Ida later tomorrow.